Hi, I'm Gavin. So I'm going to look at another film stock, and this is something a bit more exotic. It's KODAK Vision 2, and we're going to look at 3 as well, 250D. Now, you've all seen this stuff over the years in the cinemas because basically most major motion pictures were shot on either 250D or what another one called 500T, which is the tungsten balance version of it. But it is slightly amusing, this. I suppose when like Oscar Barnack invented his first camera, he wanted to use 35mm cinema film because it's cheaper. And that's why we have the 35mm format. So all these years later now, because the cost of film's gone through the roof again, like normal stuff like portrait or this, people are going back to shooting motion picture stocks, which is like, where we started. So it's become quite interesting actually, because there's some quite like boutique places have popped up that roll this stuff from the 1,000, 2,000 foot cans into 36, 32 rolls. Was it 135 canisters or whatever they're called that go into normal cameras. Now, I mean, there's a great place I get my stuff from. I'll put a link to it. It's called Northern Film Labs. I'll put a link to it in the description. That the chap who runs it's got like an embarrassment of treasure when it comes to old and interesting stocks to shoot. And this is Vision 2. So this is the previous version to Vision 3. Vision 3 is the current KODAK 250 daylight stock. They've also got 50D as well. And the generation before that was Vision 2. So this is expired stock, and he's got all sorts on that website. It's great. So motion picture stock, it's an interesting one. It's not the same as most of you probably know as normal camera C41 film, because it has an additional coating on it which is called Remjet. And what does Remjet do? Remjet adds an element of control to halation, which is those red things you see on the edge of bright lights. You get like a red hit. Halation's in everything, you do see it, but it's like a control in this. It's halation in normal film, but it's like control air. Also, Remjet is to minimize static, because obviously as the film flies through a 24 frames a second and it creates movement, creates static, which attracts dust, which makes scratches. So you don't want that. So yeah, it's a lubrication strip as well, so it makes the film flow easier. So it's like 3 things going on. Now, the problem with Remjet is you can't process it in a normal C41 mini lab. You have to remove the Remjet with like a there's proper washes for it, but you can use it sodium bicarbonate. Don't hold me to that, but like you can do a pre-wash to remove the Remjet before you develop it normally as C41. However, that isn't the correct way to develop this stuff. You have to develop it with a process called ENC2, which is basically Eastman color negative something or other, which is the proper development process for motion picture stock. If you develop it C41, you'll get a shift in the colors. There's people now removing the Remjet, like CineStill. They remove the Remjet, and then you can develop it C41. But obviously, it's not quite the same as if you've done it with a motion picture process development. The colors aren't quite the same, and it is a bit of a thing. If you shoot this stuff and you develop it EC2N, you're not really going to see exactly what it would be like. You're not taking motion pictures. Let me explain that. When you shoot film, you shoot the negative. Then the negative in the old process was made into like an interpositive and an internegative. It was color timed, and there's a work print, and then there's a print release version. So there's multiple versions of the film, and obviously grain, it changes its colors. And this used to happen to every movie. So they were all color timed. They were all transferred multiple times. So it's not really a true translation when you shoot this stuff. And then obviously the middle bit was removed, and we went to a thing called digital intermediary, where it was sort of like scanned in digital reprint. So it's still another stock at the other end that you're seeing it might be the same, but I mean, it's transferring. So it's not like a pure way that we do, where we develop this and we see the print. There's always steps in between normally for motion picture stock. And yeah, I mean, obviously it's still in use today, loads. I mean, it's great stuff. It is interesting that it's sort of made a bit of a massive resurgence. I mean, I I think, I mean, with commercials, we used to do a thing called a film out, where you shoot it digitally and then you have it processed back out to film. You scan the film back in, and then you use that. So it gives it's like the most expensive grain plugin you've ever seen on for visual effects. But I think the new Dune movie was shot digitally and then printed back to film and then scanned back in. Anyway, yeah, and it can get even more complicated because it used to. I mean, they don't do this anymore. Fuji makes, and we'll have a look at some of those. Used to make some great motion picture stock. And what would happen is you'd shoot it on Fuji, but your release print would be Kodak, things like that. So you'd get mixtures. So yeah, so you have to sort of forget about the motion picture bit with this when you shoot it and just take it for what you get. C41's fine to develop it in. You know, if you remove the ramjet and do C41's fine. You've got to look. It's an art form, photography, isn't it? It's not like strict. So, and if you do EC2N, you'll get a different look. And so yeah, so what I did was I've shot a roll of Vision 2 250D. I also shot some Vision 3 250D. I shot the Vision 3 250D with a Pentax MZS through I think it was like a 40mm, 43mm or the 28. The Vision 2 was shot through the Minolta 9 with Minolta glass. So what we do is just have a look at some of the photos, and you can see it's great to see the difference between them because one's a previous generation of film and one's the modern generation of film. Okay, so this first bit of graffiti, this is daylight. It's got a bit of a tint on it, and this is Vision 2, and it's beautiful, great, but it's slightly different, as you'll see. Let me jump to the next picture. Okay, this is just like one of my test shots. This is Vision 3. Now, this has got literally no grain. It's got great tones. Both of them, by the way, were developed EC2N, not C41. It just looks, it's great. It's like, that's a really basic picture, but it just shows you that you get the right light for 250D. You really are in for a treat with it. I mean, golden hour, an early morning with 250D is fantastic. Okay, and here's my cat being a test again. Now, this was shot 250D Vision 3, and it's actually a bit sharper. Obviously, they've made modifications between the generations, and it is interesting to see the difference between them. And here she is again. This is Vision 3 again. It's the same sort of thing. Beautiful golden end of day light, shadow of the cat on the wall. Okay, and this one is Vision 2 250D, and I took this in a train station. So obviously it's slightly tinted because obviously the lights aren't daylights, and it does sort of when you shoot the tungsten and stuff, it does react to the incorrect lighting conditions. So you can see this is a bit more muted as well. And then what else have we got next? Okay, and this is just a generic roses shot. This is Vision 2 250D as well. It's a bit more muted. There is a difference here. I should have said this. I shot the Vision 2 250D at 200 ISO, and I shot the Vision 3 at 125. So I might jump back to a picture to show you that. It's a lot more. This one here is 250D Vision 2. It's a bit more muted, the colours, on the one that was done at 200 ISO, which is a Vision 2. So if you jump back to this one, okay, that's Vision 3, and that's at 125 ISO. It's like a much richer colours. I don't think it's anything to do with the age of the film, to tell you the truth. I think they've just got a slightly different look, and I think they've got slightly different like colour profiles. But they're developed in the same lab, and they were developed in the same way. So there you go. There's a quick look at Vision 2 250D and Vision 3 250D. I mean, it's pointless making a video about both, wasn't it? I mean, they're very, very similar. Now, you can get this stuff. It's great. Check out the link below. Guys got absolutely brilliant stock to play with if you want to do something different. you're seeing research, you can see it now on the shelf. I think Film Flick guys also do it, that you can get 250D in canisters. People are really getting into doing it, obviously, because it's, portrait, all this. I mean, if you think about it, it's the highest evolution of film. The Vision 3 stuff is like the last, it's in production, it's not in production, and it's like sort of all the technology for film would go into the stuff that's used in cinema. It has to be the best, doesn't it really? It really does, because it's sort of like, but it is tricky. Kodak are ramping up the prices of everything else, but they can't really ramp up the prices of motion picture stock because it's their big sell, isn't it? If they're still shooting films on film, it's the big thing about using film. So if they push the prices up on motion picture stock, that'll drive the studios to maybe shoot more digitally because of like the budgets. So they've kept that low. So you can, there's good deals to be had if you buy, if you're prepared to take the step and shoot motion picture stock. I've got other ones. I've got some Fuji. I've got some loads of old as well. We'd go through those. They're beautiful, beautiful things to shoot, and it doesn't really matter what camera. If you're prepared to like go through the steps to get the stuff developed, they're just fantastic. Anyway, there you go. Kodak motion picture film. Beautiful stuff. Thanks for watching.